The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Captain Elena Vasquez stood at attention in the sterile military processing room. She had served her country for 8 years, earned 2 Purple Hearts, and commanded respect from every soldier under her leadership. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for what was about to unfold in the next 20 minutes. What started as a routine security clearance review would become the most shocking moment in military intelligence history, revealing a secret so classified that only 3 people in the entire world knew it existed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Captain Vasquez received the unexpected summons. The message was brief and direct. Report to Building 47, Room 302, 0800 hours. Bring no personal effects. Security clearance review required. She had undergone dozens of these reviews throughout her military career, each one a tedious but necessary part of maintaining her top-secret clearance. This time felt different, though she couldn't pinpoint why. The building itself was unremarkable, a concrete structure tucked away in the corner of Fort Meade, Maryland, far from the main thoroughfares where most personnel conducted their daily business. Room 302 was on the 3rd floor, accessible only by a single elevator that required special clearance to operate. As Elena stepped off the elevator, she was greeted by 2 stern-faced military police officers who escorted her down a narrow hallway lined with unmarked doors. "Captain Vasquez," said the first MP, a tall man with piercing blue eyes and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite, "you're to wait here until called." He gestured toward a small waiting area with uncomfortable plastic chairs and outdated magazines. The only sound was the persistent hum of the ventilation system and the occasional footstep from somewhere deeper in the building. Elena had learned long ago that in the military, patience was not just a virtue, it was a survival skill. She sat quietly, running through potential reasons for this unexpected review in her mind. Her last mission had been completed successfully 3 months ago. Her security clearance was up to date. Her psychological evaluations had all come back clean. There was nothing in her record that should have triggered additional scrutiny. 27 minutes later, a woman in civilian clothes emerged from one of the unmarked doors. She was perhaps 50 years old, with silver hair pulled back into a severe bun and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail they encountered. "Captain Vasquez," she said, her voice carrying an authority that transcended military rank. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. Please come with me." The room Dr. Chen led her to was unlike any military facility Elena had ever seen. Instead of the usual government-issue furniture and fluorescent lighting, this space was appointed with mahogany furniture, soft lighting, and what appeared to be genuine artwork on the walls. A conference table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by leather chairs that looked more suited to a corporate boardroom than a military installation. "Please, have a seat," Dr. Chen said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "I know this is unusual, Captain. I want you to know that everything that happens in this room is classified at the highest levels. Nothing you see or hear today can be discussed with anyone, not your commanding officers, not your family, not even your chaplain. Do you understand?" Elena nodded, though a chill was beginning to work its way up her spine. In 8 years of military service, she had never encountered security protocols quite like these. "I understand, ma'am." Dr. Chen opened a thick manila folder and spread several documents across the table. Elena could see photographs, what appeared to be medical records, and several pages of text with large portions blacked out, the telltale sign of heavily classified material. "Captain, I need to ask you some questions about your childhood, specifically about the period between your 7th and 9th birthdays." The question caught her completely off guard. Her childhood had been thoroughly investigated when she first applied for security clearance 8 years ago. Every friend, every teacher, every neighbor had been interviewed. Her parents had submitted to polygraph examinations. Her medical records had been scrutinized down to her vaccination records. What could possibly require additional investigation? Ma'am, I'm not sure what specific information you're looking for, Elena replied carefully. My childhood has already been thoroughly documented in my security clearance files. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression becoming even more serious. Captain, I need you to tell me about the summer you spent with your grandmother in New Mexico. You were 8 years old. Do you remember that summer? Elena's breath caught in her throat. She remembered that summer vividly. It had been one of the best times of her childhood. Her grandmother, Maria Santos, had lived on a small ranch outside of Albuquerque, and Elena had spent 3 magical months learning to ride horses, helping with the farm animals, and listening to her grandmother's stories about their family history. But how could that peaceful summer possibly be relevant to a security clearance review? Yes, ma'am, I remember it well, Elena said slowly. It was a wonderful summer. My grandmother taught me to speak Spanish fluently, and we spent a lot of time together. Did she ever tell you stories about your great-grandfather? Dr. Chen asked, making notes on a yellow legal pad. Her mind raced. Her great-grandfather had died before she was born, but her grandmother had indeed told her many stories about him. He had been a fascinating man, an immigrant from Spain who had somehow managed to build a successful ranch in the American Southwest during the early 1900s. But again, Elena couldn't understand why this family history would be relevant to her current situation. She told me many stories about him, Elena replied. He was apparently quite an interesting man. He came to America with very little money, but managed to build a successful life here. Dr. Chen nodded and made more notes. Then she looked up, and Elena saw something in her expression that made her stomach clench with anxiety. It was the look of someone who is about to deliver devastating news. Captain Vasquez, Dr. Chen said slowly, I need to inform you that your great-grandfather was not just a successful rancher. According to recently declassified documents, he was also a deep-cover operative for the Office of Strategic Services, the predecessor to the CIA. His real name was not Miguel Santos, as your family believed. His real name was Colonel Miguel Alejandro Restrepo, and he was one of the most successful intelligence operatives in American history. Elena felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and she gripped the arms of her leather chair to steady herself. Her great-grandfather, the gentleman her grandmother had described with such love and admiration, had been a spy? It seemed impossible, yet the deadly serious expression on Dr. Chen's face made it clear that this was no joke or misunderstanding. I don't understand, Elena managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. My grandmother never mentioned anything about intelligence work. She always said he was just a rancher who had come from Spain looking for a better life. Dr. Chen nodded sympathetically. That was exactly what he wanted everyone to believe, including his family. Colonel Restrepo's cover identity was so complete that even his wife and children never knew his true background. It was only after his death in 1963 that certain documents came to light, and even then, the information was classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of people in the entire intelligence community knew the truth. Elena's mind was reeling. Everything she thought she knew about her family history was apparently built on a foundation of carefully constructed lies. But even more confusing was why this information was being revealed to her now, decades after her great-grandfather's death. Ma'am, she said, struggling to keep her voice steady, I still don't understand why this is relevant to my security clearance review. My great-grandfather died when I was a child. I never even met him. Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair and studied Elena for a long moment. Captain, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to process. During his years of service, your great-grandfather was involved in several highly classified operations.
One of these operations involved the development of a new type of intelligence protocol, a way of encoding and storing critical information that could be accessed only under very specific circumstances. She paused and reached into the manila folder, pulling out what appeared to be a black and white photograph from the 1940s. The image showed a tall, distinguished-looking man in a military uniform standing next to what looked like some kind of scientific equipment. Elena could see a family resemblance in the man's features, the same dark eyes and strong jawline that she saw in the mirror every morning. "This is your great-grandfather, photographed during Operation Blackbird in 1947. He was working with a team of scientists and cryptographers to develop what they called biological encryption, a method of storing classified information in living tissue that could be passed down through genetic inheritance." Elena stared at the photograph, trying to process what she was hearing. "Biological encryption? Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand what that means." Dr. Chen stood up and walked to one of the windows overlooking the base. "Captain, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to process, but your great-grandfather volunteered to be the subject of an experimental procedure using a combination of advanced tattooing techniques and biochemical compounds that were cutting edge for the time. The team embedded a series of encoded messages into his skin. These messages contained critical intelligence information that needed to be preserved for future generations." Elena felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. What kind of information? Details about Nazi war criminals who escaped prosecution after World War II, location of hidden assets that were stolen during the war, information about Soviet infiltration networks that were being established in the United States. Essentially, your great-grandfather became a living archive of some of the most sensitive intelligence information of the 20th century. The room was silent, except for the continued humming of the ventilation system. Elena tried to wrap her mind around what she was being told. Her great-grandfather had been a human storage device for classified information? It sounded absurd, yet the official setting and Dr. Chen's obvious authority made it impossible to dismiss as fantasy. "But ma'am," she said, slowly, "even if this is true, my great-grandfather died over 50 years ago. How is this relevant to me?" Dr. Chen returned to her seat and opened another section of the manila folder. This one contained what appeared to be medical charts and DNA analysis reports. "Captain, the biological encryption process was designed to be heritable. The encoded information was embedded in such a way that it would be passed down through the genetic line, appearing as seemingly random, tattoo-like markings on the skin of descendants." Elena's heart began to pound. She thought about the small, intricate markings on her rib cage, markings that she had always assumed were birthmarks. They formed an unusual pattern that had always reminded her of some kind of abstract art, but she had never given them much thought. Her doctor during her military physical had noted them in her medical file as benign dermal pigmentation of unknown origin. "Ma'am," Elena said, her voice barely audible, "are you saying that I might have these markings?" Dr. Chen nodded gravely. "Captain, according to our genetic analysis and family history research, there is a very high probability that you are carrying classified intelligence information in the form of inherited biological encryption. The markings on your ribcage, which I'm sure you've noticed throughout your life, are not birthmarks or random pigmentation. They are an encoded message that has been waiting 60 years to be deciphered." Elena felt as if she were living in a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The idea that her own body might be carrying state secrets seemed impossible to believe, yet everything about this situation suggested that the impossible had become reality. "What happens now?" she asked. Dr. Chen's expression became even more serious, if that were possible. "Captain, we need to verify whether you are indeed carrying this information. This will require a thorough medical examination and photographic documentation of the markings. Given the classified nature of this information, the examination must be conducted under the strictest security protocols." She paused and looked directly into Elena's eyes. I need to inform you that this examination will require you to disrobe completely so that our medical team can photograph and analyze every marking on your body. I know this is highly unusual and potentially uncomfortable, but the national security implications are too significant to allow any other approach.
Elena sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what Dr. Chen had just told her. The sterile military environment suddenly felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in around her. She had volunteered to serve her country in many dangerous situations over the past 8 years. She had been deployed to war zones, conducted reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines, and risked her life countless times for the sake of national security. But nothing had prepared her for the possibility that her own body might be a classified document. "Ma'am," Elena said, struggling to maintain her military composure, "I understand the importance of national security, but this is unprecedented. Are you absolutely certain that this biological encryption process actually worked? It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel." Dr. Chen reached into her folder again and produced a series of documents with official government seals. "Captain, I understand your skepticism. The technology was indeed far ahead of its time, but the theoretical foundation was sound. The team that developed this process included some of the most brilliant scientists and cryptographers of the 20th century. They were working with resources and funding that gave them access to experimental techniques that weren't available to the general scientific community." She spread several pages across the table, each one stamped with classifications like top secret and eyes only. Elena could see portions of text that appeared to be scientific reports, but most of the content was blacked out with heavy reduction marks. The process involved introducing specially modified ink compounds into the skin through traditional tattooing methods. However, these compounds contained microscopic biological markers that would respond to specific genetic triggers. The information was encoded using a mathematical algorithm that could only be deciphered using both the visual pattern of the markings and the unique genetic signature of the carrier. Elena studied the documents, trying to make sense of the limited information that wasn't redacted. One phrase caught her attention: "Successful transmission to third-generation carrier confirmed through laboratory analysis." "Third generation," Elena murmured. "That would be me." "Exactly," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Your great-grandfather was the original carrier, your grandfather would have been the second generation, and you represent the third generation. According to the project documentation, the biological encryption was designed to remain dormant until activated by specific environmental factors or deliberate decryption attempts." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of environmental factors? "That information is still classified above your current clearance level," Dr. Chen replied. "What I can tell you is that recent developments in international intelligence have made it critical that we locate and decrypt any remaining biological encryption carriers. The information your great-grandfather was carrying may be vital to current national security operations." Elena stood up from her chair and began pacing the small confines of the room. The weight of this revelation was overwhelming. Her entire understanding of her family history had been turned upside down in the span of 30 minutes, and now she was being asked to participate in what amounted to a scientific experiment using her own body as the subject. "Dr. Chen," she said, stopping in front of the window, "what happens if I refuse to participate in this examination?" Dr. Chen's expression became grave. "Captain, I'm afraid that refusal is not an option. The markings on your body are classified government property, technically speaking. The Biological Encryption Act of 1948, which has never been declassified, grants the federal government legal authority to examine and decrypt any biological encryption carriers in the interest of national security." Elena turned around to face Dr. Chen, a mixture of anger and disbelief flashing in her eyes. "You're telling me that my own body is government property?" "Not your body, Captain. The information encoded in your markings.
Just as any soldier who has access to classified information has a legal obligation to protect and surrender that information when required, you have an obligation to allow us to access the information that has been stored in your genetic markers. Elena sank back into her chair, feeling defeated. The military had been her life for 8 years, and she had always taken pride in her service to her country. But this situation felt fundamentally different from any order she had ever been given. The idea of being treated as a walking classified document rather than a human being was deeply disturbing. "What exactly will this examination involve?" she asked quietly. Dr. Chen opened yet another section of her folder. "You will be taken to a secure medical facility within this building. The examination will be conducted by a team of military doctors and intelligence specialists, all of whom have the highest level of security clearance. Every marking on your body will be photographed using specialized equipment that can detect the biological compounds embedded in your skin." She paused and looked at Elena with what might have been sympathy. "I know this is difficult, Captain. The examination will require complete disrobing and will likely take several hours. The team will need to photograph you from multiple angles and may need to use various types of specialized lighting and imaging equipment to properly document the markings." Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her 8 years of military service, she had faced enemy fire, survived an IED explosion, and endured interrogation training that had pushed her to her psychological limits. But the prospect of being treated as a specimen for scientific study felt like a violation of her humanity in a way that combat never had. "Will I be alone with the examination team?" she asked. "You will have the right to have a female military advocate present during the examination. Additionally, I will be overseeing the entire process to ensure that proper protocols are followed and that your dignity is preserved to the extent possible given the security requirements." Elena nodded slowly. She understood that she had no real choice in the matter, but at least there would be some protections in place. "When does this examination take place?" Dr. Chen checked her watch. "The medical team is standing by. If you're ready, we can proceed immediately. I know this is a lot to process, Captain, but time is of critical importance. The intelligence community has reason to believe that hostile foreign agents may be aware of the biological encryption program and could be actively seeking to locate carriers like yourself. The information your great-grandfather was carrying may be vital to current national security operations." The implications of that statement hit Elena like a physical blow. Not only was she apparently carrying classified information in her own skin, but she might also be a target for enemy agents who wanted to access that information. "Dr. Chen," she said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil, "I need you to promise me something." "What is that, Captain?" "Promise me that regardless of what this examination reveals, I will still be treated as a soldier and a human being, not just as a classified document with legs." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Captain Vasquez, you have my word that we will conduct this examination with the utmost respect for your dignity and your service to this country. You are a decorated soldier, and nothing about this situation changes the honor and sacrifice you have already demonstrated." Elena stood up, straightened her uniform, and looked Dr. Chen directly in the eyes. "Then let's get this over with."
The medical facility was located 3 floors below ground level, accessible only through a series of security checkpoints that required both biometric scanning and armed escort. As Elena descended deeper into the building, she felt as though she was entering a different world entirely, one where the normal rules of military protocol and human dignity seemed to be suspended in favor of something far more sinister. The hallways were wider here, lined with unmarked doors that bore only numerical designations. The lighting was different too, harsher, more clinical, designed for precision work rather than human comfort. Elena's footsteps echoed off the polished concrete floors, creating an eerie rhythm that seemed to count down to her fate. "This way, Captain," said Dr. Chen, gesturing toward a door marked Medical Suite 7. 2 military police officers flanked the entrance, their faces impassive, but their hands resting casually on their sidearms. The message was clear. This was not a place where anyone left without permission.
The medical suite itself was a stark, white-walled room that looked more like a high-tech laboratory than a traditional examination room. Banks of sophisticated camera equipment lined the walls, along with computer terminals displaying complex data streams that Elena couldn't begin to interpret. In the center of the room was an adjustable examination table surrounded by bright surgical lights that could be positioned to eliminate any shadow. 3 people were waiting inside. 2 doctors in military uniforms and a woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Major Patricia Williams, Elena's assigned female advocate. The lead doctor, a colonel named Michael Reeves, had the kind of precise intellectual demeanor that suggested years of specialized training in highly classified work. "Captain Vasquez," Colonel Reeves said, extending his hand, "I want you to know that this examination will be conducted with the utmost professionalism. We understand the unusual nature of this situation, and we've taken every precaution to ensure your comfort and dignity." Elena shook his hand and nodded, though she was fighting back waves of anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her military training. "Thank you, sir. I just want to get this over with as quickly as possible." "Of course," Colonel Reeves replied. "Before we begin, I need to explain exactly what we'll be doing. We'll be using several different types of imaging equipment to photograph and analyze the markings on your skin. Some of this equipment uses ultraviolet light, which can reveal compounds that aren't visible under normal lighting conditions. We'll also be taking tissue samples from the areas where the markings are most concentrated." Elena's eyes widened. "Tissue samples? No one mentioned anything about taking samples." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Captain, the tissue samples are necessary to confirm the presence of the biological compounds and to begin the decryption process. The samples will be extremely small, no larger than the tip of a pencil, and the procedure is similar to a standard biopsy." Elena felt her composure beginning to crack. The idea of having pieces of her skin removed for analysis felt like a violation that went beyond even the invasive nature of the examination itself. "And if I refuse to allow the tissue samples?" "Captain," Colonel Reeves said gently but firmly, "the tissue samples are not optional. They are a critical component of the decryption process. Without them, we cannot access the information that may be vital to current national security operations." Elena closed her eyes and took several deep breaths, calling upon every technique she had learned during her survival and interrogation training. She reminded herself that she was a soldier, that she had sworn an oath to defend her country, and that countless lives might depend on the information locked away in her own skin. "All right," she said finally. "Let's do this." Major Williams approached and handed Elena a hospital gown. "Captain, you can change behind that screen. Take your time, and remember that I'll be present throughout the entire examination to ensure that proper protocols are followed." Elena took the gown and walked behind the privacy screen, her hands trembling slightly as she began to remove her uniform. Each piece of clothing felt like she was shedding another layer of her identity as a soldier and becoming something else. A specimen, a carrier, a living classified document. When she emerged wearing only the thin hospital gown, she felt more exposed and vulnerable than she had ever had in combat. "Please lie down on the examination table," Colonel Reeves instructed. "We'll start with a complete visual examination under normal lighting, then move to the specialized imaging equipment." Elena positioned herself on the table, staring up at the bright surgical lights. The examination began with the doctors photographing every inch of her skin, paying particular attention to what she had always assumed were birthmarks on her rib cage, shoulder, and lower back. As they worked, they maintained a running commentary about the size, shape, and positioning of various markings. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Chen, studying the images on a computer monitor. "The patterns are much more complex than we anticipated. Look at the way these markings on her ribs connect to the ones on her shoulder blade. It's clearly a continuous design that was meant to be read as a unified message." Elena tried to remain calm, but hearing herself discussed as if she were an artifact rather than a person was deeply unsettling. She focused on her breathing and tried to imagine herself somewhere else, back on her grandmother's ranch in New Mexico, perhaps riding horses under the endless blue sky of her childhood. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Captain, Colonel Reeves said, we're going to switch to ultraviolet imaging now. This may reveal additional markings that aren't visible under normal light. The room will be quite dark, so don't be alarmed. The lights dimmed, and Elena found herself bathed in an eerie purple glow from the UV equipment. Immediately, the markings on her skin began to fluoresce with an intensity that took everyone in the room by surprise. "My God," whispered Dr. Chen. "Look at the extent of the encoding. There are markings extending far beyond what we could see with normal light." Elena turned her head to look at one of the monitors displaying the UV images of her body and gasped. Under the ultraviolet light, her skin was covered with intricate patterns that resembled a combination of text, mathematical symbols, and complex geometric designs. The markings extended from her rib cage all the way up to her collarbone and down to her hip, creating an elaborate tapestry of information that had been invisible under normal lighting conditions. "How is this possible?" Elena asked, her voice barely audible. "I've never seen any of these markings before." The compounds used in the biological encryption process were designed to be invisible under normal lighting conditions. They only become visible when exposed to specific wavelengths of light. Your great-grandfather was essentially turned into a living book, with pages that could only be read using the right technology. Elena stared at the images of her own body, struggling to comprehend that she had been carrying this hidden message her entire life without knowing it. The markings were beautiful in their own way, intricate and artistic, like a combination of ancient calligraphy and modern computer code. "What does it say?" she asked. Dr. Chen was studying the patterns intently, occasionally consulting what appeared to be reference materials. "It's going to take time to fully decrypt, but I can already make out several elements. There are definitely geographic coordinates here and what appears to be a series of names and dates. Some of these patterns match cryptographic techniques that were used by the OSS during World War II. As the examination continued, Elena found herself entering an almost meditative state. The initial terror and embarrassment of the situation had given way to a kind of fascination with the scientific process unfolding around her. She was witnessing the revelation of secrets that had been hidden for over 60 years, secrets that her own body had been protecting without her knowledge.
The tissue sampling portion of the examination proved to be more intensive than Elena had anticipated. Colonel Reeves used a specialized biopsy tool that looked like a miniature coring device, carefully extracting tiny cylindrical samples from specific locations where the markings were most concentrated. Elena gritted her teeth against the sharp, stinging pain, reminding herself that she had endured far worse during her military service. "These samples will be sent to our cryptographic laboratory immediately," Dr. Chen explained, as each specimen was carefully labeled and sealed in a specialized container. The biological compounds contain microscopic markers that can only be analyzed using electron microscopy and chemical spectroscopy. As the medical team worked, Elena became aware of an increasing level of excitement and tension in the room. Dr. Chen was making frequent phone calls to unseen colleagues, speaking in hushed tones about unprecedented preservation levels and completely intact encoding structures. Colonel Reeves seemed to be photographing the markings from every conceivable angle, occasionally muttering to himself about the sophistication of the encryption methods. "Captain," said Major Williams, leaning close to Elena's ear, "how are you holding up? We can take a break if you need one." Elena shook her head. "I'm fine, Major. I just want to understand what all of this means. The markings, the information. What was my great-grandfather involved in that required such extreme measures?" Dr. Chen overheard the question and paused in her work. "Captain, what I'm about to tell you is still classified, but given your unique situation, you have a right to know some of the background. Your great-grandfather was part of a small team of operatives who are responsible for tracking and documenting Nazi war criminals who escaped prosecution after World War II.
She gestured to one of the monitors displaying the ultraviolet images of Elena's markings. These coordinates that we're seeing encoded in your skin, they correspond to locations where stolen Nazi gold and artwork were hidden. The names and dates relate to specific war criminals who assumed new identities and disappeared into South American countries that were sympathetic to their cause. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool temperature of the examination room. Are you saying that my body contains evidence about Nazi war criminals? Not just evidence, Captain, Dr. Chen replied grimly. Your body contains a complete intelligence dossier that could potentially lead to the capture of war criminals who are still alive today. Some of the individuals documented in your biological encryption may still be operating networks that pose active threats to international security. Colonel Reeves looked up from his camera equipment. Captain, there's something else you need to know. The reason this information was encoded biologically rather than stored in traditional files is that there were concerns about infiltration within the intelligence community itself. Your great-grandfather and his team suspected that some of the Nazi collaborators had managed to place agents within American intelligence agencies. Elena's mind reeled. The implications of what she was hearing were staggering. Not only was she carrying information about Nazi war criminals, but the very method used to preserve that information suggested that the American intelligence community had been compromised by enemy agents over 60 years ago. Is that why this examination is taking place now, after all these years? Dr. Chen and Colonel Reeves exchanged a meaningful look. Captain, Dr. Chen said carefully, recent developments in international intelligence have suggested that some of these old networks may still be active. There have been indications that hostile foreign agents are actively searching for biological encryption carriers. The fact that you've maintained an active security clearance and serve in a position with access to sensitive information may have made you a target. Elena felt a surge of anger. Are you telling me that I've been in danger this entire time and nobody bothered to inform me? We only became aware of the potential threat 3 weeks ago, Colonel Reeves replied. The moment our analysts identified you as a likely carrier, we initiated this examination. Your safety and the security of the information you're carrying are our highest priorities. As if to underscore the seriousness of the situation, one of the military police officers posted outside the examination room suddenly opened the door and stepped inside. He spoke quietly to Dr. Chen, who immediately became visibly tense. "What is it?" Elena asked, sitting up on the examination table. Dr. Chen hesitated for a moment, then spoke with obvious reluctance. Captain, there has been unusual activity outside the building. Our security team has detected surveillance equipment that suggests someone may be attempting to monitor this facility. Elena felt her military training kick in immediately. Despite being dressed only in a hospital gown and lying on an examination table, her mind shifted into tactical mode. What kind of surveillance? How close are they? We don't have complete details yet, Colonel Reeves said, but our security protocols require that we accelerate this examination. We need to complete the documentation and tissue sampling as quickly as possible. Elena nodded grimly. Then let's finish this. If someone is out there trying to get access to this information, I'd rather they not succeed. The next hour passed in a blur of intense activity. The medical team worked with military precision, completing their photographic documentation under multiple types of specialized lighting. Elena found herself impressed by their professionalism despite the unusual circumstances. They treated her with respect and dignity as they subjected her to the most invasive examination of her life. Captain, Dr. Chen said as they prepared to conclude the examination, I need to inform you that until we can fully decrypt and secure this information, you will need to remain under protective custody. The markings on your body represent a security asset that cannot be allowed to fall into hostile hands. Elena had expected something like this, but hearing it stated so directly was still a shock. For how long? We don't know yet, Colonel Reeves replied honestly. It could be days, it could be weeks. It depends on how quickly we can decrypt the information and neutralize any potential threats. As Elena got dressed behind the privacy screen, she reflected on how completely her life had changed in the space of a few hours. This morning, she was Captain Elena Vasquez, a decorated military officer with a normal life and a bright future. Now she was apparently a walking classified document, carrying secrets that could potentially reshape understanding of post-World War II intelligence operations. "Captain," said Major Williams as Elena emerged fully clothed, "I want you to know that you've handled this entire situation with remarkable composure. What you've endured today would have been traumatic for anyone, but you've maintained your dignity and professionalism." Elena managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Major. I suppose my grandmother's stories about family strength and resilience were more accurate than I realized."
The safe house was a nondescript suburban home located about 20 miles from the military base, the kind of place that could blend invisibly into any middle-class neighborhood in America. Elena was escorted there in an unmarked government vehicle with tinted windows, accompanied by Dr. Chen and two plainclothes security agents who maintained constant vigilance during the 30-minute drive. The house itself was surprisingly comfortable, furnished like a typical family home, but with subtle security modifications that revealed its true purpose. Reinforced windows, multiple layers of electronic surveillance equipment, and communication gear that looked far too sophisticated for a residential setting. Elena was assigned a bedroom on the second floor that had a clear view of the street, both a comfort and a reminder that she was being watched as much as protected. "Captain," Dr. Chen said as they settled into the living room, "I know this is a difficult transition, but I need to brief you on some additional developments that have occurred while we were conducting your examination." Elena sank into one of the comfortable armchairs, feeling emotionally and physically exhausted. "More developments? I'm not sure how much more I can process today." Dr. Chen opened a secure laptop and turned the screen so Elena could see it. The display showed what appeared to be a satellite map with several locations marked in red. "Our intelligence analysts have been working to cross-reference the coordinates that were encoded in your markings with current geographical data. What they've discovered is both exciting and deeply concerning." Elena studied the map, recognizing several South American countries including Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. "These are the locations where the Nazi assets are hidden?" "Some of them, yes," Dr. Chen confirmed, "but that's not the most significant discovery. Our analysts noticed that several of these coordinates correspond to locations where unusual financial activity has been detected in recent years. Large-scale money transfers, property purchases, and investment activities that didn't match normal economic patterns." Elena felt a chill of understanding. "You're saying that someone has been accessing these hidden assets?" "That's exactly what we're saying," Dr. Chen replied grimly. "It appears that at least some of the information encoded in your great-grandfather's biological encryption has been compromised. Someone else has been systematically locating and liquidating these hidden Nazi treasures." Elena stood up and began pacing the living room, her military mind working through the implications. If someone else has access to this information, then there must be other carriers, other descendants of the original operatives who underwent the biological encryption process. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "Very good, Captain. That's exactly the conclusion our analysts reached. We believe there were at least 5 original carriers in the biological encryption program, which means there could be dozens of descendants walking around today with classified information embedded in their skin." Elena stopped pacing and turned to face Dr. Chen directly. "And someone has been hunting these carriers down?" "We believe so," Dr. Chen said carefully. "Over the past 3 years, there have been 17 suspicious deaths involving individuals whose family histories connect them to OSS operatives from the 1940s. These deaths appeared to be natural or accidental, but when analyzed as a pattern, they suggest a systematic elimination campaign." Elena felt her blood run cold. 17 people have been murdered for the information they were carrying? "We can't prove murder in all cases," Dr. Chen said carefully, "but the statistical probability of so many related deaths occurring naturally is virtually zero. Someone has been identifying carriers and either extracting the information they need or eliminating potential sources of intelligence." Elena sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was learning. Not only was she carrying classified information that made her valuable to foreign agents, but she was apparently part of a larger network of people who had been systematically targeted for assassination. "Dr. Chen," Elena said slowly, "you said that our facility was under surveillance today. Do you think they found me?" Dr. Chen's expression was grave.
Captain, we have reason to believe that hostile agents have been tracking military personnel with genetic markers consistent with biological encryption carriers. Your active security clearance and family history may have made you particularly visible to their search algorithms. Elena felt a surge of the same adrenaline rush she had experienced during combat operations. Despite the fear and confusion of the past several hours, she was still a soldier, and soldiers knew how to deal with threats. What's our tactical situation? How many hostiles are we dealing with, and what kind of resources do they have? Dr. Chen smiled slightly. I'm glad to see your military training taking over, Captain. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need right now. Based on our intelligence analysis, we believe we're dealing with a sophisticated international organization with connections to both organized crime and state-sponsored intelligence agencies. She manipulated the screen to display a series of photographs showing various individuals. These are some of the people we believe are involved in the carrier elimination campaign. Most of them have backgrounds in military intelligence, special operations, or international organized crime. They have access to advanced surveillance technology, financial resources, and a network of operatives in multiple countries. Elena studied the faces on the screen, committing them to memory. Some looked like ordinary business people or academics, while others had the hard, predatory appearance she associated with professional killers. What do they want with the information? If they've already accessed some of the hidden assets, why continue hunting carriers? Because the biological encryption program was more extensive than just hidden Nazi treasures. Your great-grandfather and his colleagues encoded information about active Soviet infiltration networks, the identities of American intelligence assets in foreign countries, and details about ongoing operations that could still be relevant today. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The information embedded in her skin wasn't just historical curiosity, it was intelligence that could affect current national security operations and potentially save lives. Dr. Chen, Elena said, straightening up in her chair, what do you need me to do? Right now, Captain, your job is to stay alive and secure while our cryptographers work to decrypt the information you're carrying. But I want you to be prepared for the possibility that we may need your active participation in a larger operation to neutralize this threat. Elena nodded grimly. I understand. When do we expect to have the decryption completed? Our initial analysis suggests it could take anywhere from 48 hours to several weeks. The encryption methods used by your great-grandfather's team were remarkably sophisticated, even by today's standards. They incorporated multiple layers of security that require both biological and mathematical analysis to unlock. As if summoned by their conversation, one of the security agents entered the living room and approached Dr. Chen. He whispered something in his ear that caused her expression to become extremely serious. What is it? Elena asked, her military instincts already alerting her to danger. Dr. Chen stood up and closed the laptop. Captain, we've just received intelligence that suggests the surveillance team from earlier today has been tracking our movements. They may have identified the safe house location. Elena immediately shifted into combat mode. What are our defensive capabilities here? How many agents do we have, and what kind of weapons and equipment are available? We have 4 security agents on site, plus backup units that can be here within 15 minutes. The house is equipped with standard defensive measures, but it's not designed to withstand a prolonged siege. Elena walked to the window and carefully peered through the blinds at the quiet suburban street outside. Everything looked normal. Kids playing in yards, neighbors walking dogs, the typical evening activities of a peaceful community. But she knew that appearances could be deceiving, especially when dealing with professional operatives. Dr. Chen, Elena said, turning back from the window, I think it's time you told me everything. If my life is in danger, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with and what options we have. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. You're right, Captain. There are some additional details about your great-grandfather's work that I haven't shared yet. Information that could change everything we think we know about this situation.
Dr. Chen walked to a secure communication device mounted on the wall and entered a series of codes. After a brief, encrypted conversation with someone at headquarters, she returned to Elena with an expression that mixed determination with deep concern. Captain, she began, settling back into her chair, what I'm got to tell you represents information classified at the highest levels of government, information that only the president and a handful of intelligence officials have access to. Your great-grandfather's biological encryption project was not just about preserving intelligence from World War II. It was part of a much larger operation called Project Inheritance. Elena felt her stomach clench with anticipation. Every revelation today had been more shocking than the last, and she sensed that Dr. Chen was about to share something that would dwarf everything she had learned so far. Project Inheritance was designed to create a distributed intelligence network that could survive any catastrophic compromise of traditional intelligence agencies, Dr. Chen continued. The architects of the program believed that the Soviet Union and other hostile nations would eventually succeed in infiltrating American intelligence services so thoroughly that conventional methods of storing and transmitting classified information would become impossible. Elena tried to process the implications of what she was hearing. So they created human storage devices as a backup system? Exactly, Dr. Chen confirmed, but it went far beyond just storing information. The biological encryption carriers were designed to serve as activation keys for a network of sleeper cells, hidden weapons caches, and financial resources that could be activated in the event of a national emergency. Elena felt the room spinning slightly. Are you telling me that my body is not just carrying information, but that it's some kind of activation key for a secret network? Dr. Chen nodded grimly. Captain, the markings on your skin contain activation codes that could potentially access a network of resources worth billions of dollars and capable of conducting independent intelligence operations anywhere in the world. This network has been dormant for over 60 years, waiting for the right biological key to bring it back to life. Elena stood up to the window again, needing to move as her mind struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what she was learning. Outside, the suburban street looked exactly the same as it had moments before, but everything felt different now. She wasn't just a soldier carrying classified information. She was apparently a human key to a secret shadow government network that had been waiting in hibernation for over half a century. Dr. Chen, Elena said, turning back to face her, if this network has been dormant for 60 years, how do we know it still exists? How do we know any of these resources are still operational? Dr. Chen opened her laptop again and showed Elena a series of financial documents and satellite images. Because our intelligence analysts have been tracking unusual activity at locations associated with Project Inheritance sites. Bank accounts that have been automatically accumulating interest for decades, suddenly showing access attempts. Properties that have been maintained by shell corporations for generations, suddenly being surveilled by unknown parties. Elena studied the documents, recognizing the sophisticated nature of the financial and logistical planning involved. Someone has been preparing to activate this network. That's our assessment, Dr. Chen confirmed, and we believe that the hostile agents who have been hunting biological encryption carriers are not just interested in the information you're carrying, they want to activate the Project Inheritance network for their own purposes. Elena felt a chill of understanding. They want to turn a secret American intelligence network into a tool for foreign powers. Precisely. The resources and capabilities built into Project Inheritance could be devastating if they fell into the wrong hands. We're talking about sleeper cells in major cities worldwide, weapons caches, communication networks, and financial resources that could fund terrorist operations for decades. Elena sank back into her chair, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. What happens if they succeed in capturing me and extracting the activation codes? Dr. Chen's expression became even more serious. Captain, based on our analysis of the network's original design, we believe that activation requires not just the biological codes, but also the conscious cooperation of the carrier. The encryption includes psychological and genetic markers that can only be properly accessed if the carrier is alive and participating willingly in the activation process. Elena felt a surge of grim satisfaction. So even if they capture me, they can't just torture the information out of me. Not easily, Dr. Chen replied. But Captain, these people have demonstrated remarkable sophistication in their methods. They've managed to eliminate 17 potential carriers over 3 years without attracting attention from law enforcement or intelligence agencies. We cannot underestimate their capabilities. As if summoned by their conversation about threats, one of the security agents entered the room with obvious urgency. Dr. Chen, we've detected movement in the area that suggests we may have hostile surveillance. Recommend immediate relocation. Elena's military training took over immediately. How much time do we have? Unknown. We've identified at least 3 vehicles that have been conducting mobile surveillance patterns around this neighborhood for the past hour. Could be reconnaissance for an immediate assault, or they could be planning for later tonight. Dr. Chen stood up and began gathering her materials. Captain, we're going to move you to a more secure location immediately. There's a military safe house facility about an hour from here that's specifically designed to handle situations like this. Elena was already moving toward the stairs to gather her few belongings. What kind of tactical support will we have during the transfer? Full military escort, armored vehicles, air support on standby, and multiple decoy convoys to confuse any potential attackers. As Elena quickly packed her things, she found herself thinking about her grandmother's ranch in New Mexico. The peaceful summer she had spent there as a child seemed like a lifetime ago, a memory from an entirely different world where the biggest worry was whether it might rain during a horseback ride. Now, she was apparently the human key to a vast secret network being hunted by international agents who had already killed 17 people to achieve their goals. Dr. Chen, Elena called from downstairs, we need to move now. Elena grabbed her jacket and headed for the stairs, her mind already shifting into the tactical mindset that had kept her alive during multiple combat deployments. Whatever happened next, she was determined that the secrets embedded in her skin would not fall into the wrong hands. As they prepared to leave the safe house, Elena caught sight of herself in a hallway mirror. She looked the same as she had that morning, the same face, the same uniform, the same confident military bearing, but she knew that everything had changed. The markings on her skin that she had never given much thought to were apparently the key to one of the most significant intelligence operations in American history. Ready, Captain? Dr. Chen asked. Elena straightened her shoulders and checked that her sidearm was properly secured. Ready. They stepped out into the cool evening air where a convoy of 3 identical black SUVs was waiting with engines running. Elena was escorted to the middle vehicle, sandwiched between heavily armed security agents who maintained constant surveillance of their surroundings. As they pulled away from the suburban safe house, Elena watched through the tinted windows as the peaceful neighborhood disappeared behind them. Somewhere out there, hostile agents were hunting for her, trying to access secrets that could reshape the global intelligence landscape. But she was a soldier, and soldiers didn't run from fights, they prepared for them. Dr. Chen, Elena said as they merged onto the highway, I need you to start preparing me for what comes next. If these people are as sophisticated as you say, and if the stakes are as high as they appear to be, then I need to understand every aspect of the situation. No more partial briefings or classified restrictions. My life is on the line, and I need the complete picture. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. Agreed, Captain. It's time you learned everything.
The military safe house facility turned out to be an underground complex built into the side of a mountain, accessible only through a tunnel that required multiple security checkpoints and biometric verification. Elena had seen similar facilities during her deployments to classified locations overseas, but nothing quite as sophisticated as this installation appeared to be. Welcome to Site Charlie, Dr. Chen said, as they descended in a high-speed elevator that seemed to drop for an impossibly long time. This facility was originally constructed during the Cold War as a continuity of government site, but it's been repurposed for handling extremely sensitive intelligence operations. Elena watched the depth indicator climb past 30 floors, then 40, then 50. How deep are we going? The main operations level is at 200 feet below ground, one of the security agents replied. The facility is designed to survive a direct nuclear strike and maintain operations for up to 6 months without external support.
When the elevator finally stopped, Elena stepped out into a corridor that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The walls were lined with advanced display screens showing real-time intelligence feeds from around the world, and the air hummed with the constant activity of sophisticated computer systems. "Captain Vasquez," said a familiar voice, and Elena turned to see a figure she recognized immediately. General Patricia Morrison, one of the highest-ranking intelligence officers in the American military. Elena had never met the general personally, but her reputation was legendary throughout the armed forces. "General Morrison," Elena said, snapping to attention and saluting. "Ma'am." "At ease, Captain," General Morrison replied, returning the salute. "Dr. Chen has been keeping me informed of your situation. I want you to know that what you've discovered today represents one of the most significant intelligence developments in decades." Elena relaxed slightly, but maintained her military bearing. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm still trying to process everything I've learned." General Morrison gestured for Elena to follow her down the corridor. "Captain, I'm going to show you something that will help put your situation in perspective. But first, I need to inform you that you are now officially part of a classified operation called Project Awakening. Everything you see and hear from this point forward is classified at the level of Presidential Daily Brief." They walked through several more security checkpoints before entering a massive operations center that reminded Elena of NASA mission control. Dozens of analysts worked at computer terminals while large screens displayed maps, financial data, satellite images, and real-time intelligence feeds from around the world. "This is the Project Inheritance Monitoring Center," General Morrison explained. "For the past 3 years, we've been tracking the systematic elimination of biological encryption carriers and trying to understand what hostile forces are planning to do with the information they're collecting." Elena studied the displays, recognizing the sophistication of the intelligence operation. "How long have you known about the carrier elimination campaign?" "We first noticed the pattern 18 months ago. What appeared to be unrelated deaths in different countries began showing statistical connections when our AI analysis systems identified common genetic and family history markers among the victims." Dr. Chen joined them at a central display showing a world map with numerous red markers. "Captain, each of these red markers represents a confirmed or suspected carrier who has died under suspicious circumstances. As you can see, the eliminations have been occurring worldwide, following a systematic pattern that suggests extensive planning and coordination." Elena counted at least 25 markers spread across North America, South America, and Europe. 25 people have been murdered? 25 confirmed cases, General Morrison corrected. "We suspect there may be others that we haven't identified yet. The sophistication of these operations suggests that whoever is behind them has access to advanced genealogical research, international travel capabilities, and assassination resources that rival state-sponsored intelligence agencies." Elena felt a chill as she realized the magnitude of the threat she was facing. "Do we have any intelligence on who is responsible?" General Morrison manipulated one of the displays to show a series of photographs and documents. "Our analysis suggests we're dealing with a consortium of organizations rather than a single group. Former Soviet intelligence operatives, international organized crime families, and neo-Nazi organizations that have been operating underground for decades." Elena studied the photographs, recognizing some of the faces from Dr. Chen's earlier briefing. What do they hope to accomplish by activating the Project Inheritance Network? "Based on intercepted communications and financial analysis," Dr. Chen replied, "we believe they're planning to use the network's resources to conduct a series of coordinated terrorist attacks against Western governments. The goal appears to be destabilizing democratic institutions and creating conditions favorable to authoritarian expansion." Elena felt her soldier's instincts kicking in. "What's our operational plan to stop them?"
General Morrison smiled approvingly. I'm glad you asked, Captain. The reason you're here is that you represent our best opportunity to turn the tables on these hostile agents. Instead of running from them, we're going to use you as bait to draw them into a trap. Elena nodded grimly. I'm listening. The plan is straightforward, General Morrison continued. We're going to leak information suggesting that you've agreed to activate the Project Inheritance Network in exchange for protection and financial compensation. When the hostile agents move to intercept you, we'll be ready with a coordinated response that will allow us to capture their leadership and neutralize their entire operation. Elena considered the plan, recognizing both its potential and its dangers. What are the risks to me personally? Significant, General Morrison replied honestly. You'll be exposed to potential capture, torture, and assassination. But Captain, if we don't take action now, these people will eventually succeed in activating the network through other means. The consequences of that would be catastrophic for international security. Elena walked to one of the large displays showing real-time intelligence feeds. She could see satellite images of military installations, financial data showing suspicious money transfers, and communication intercepts in multiple languages. The scope of the threat was clearly enormous, affecting not just American interests, but global security. General, Elena said, turning back to face the senior officers, when do we begin? General Morrison exchanged a look with Dr. Chen. Actually, Captain, the operation has already begun. The intelligence we leaked about your willingness to cooperate was transmitted 3 hours ago. Based on our analysis of their previous operations, we expect them to make contact within the next 24 hours. Elena felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with apprehension. So, I'm already the bait in the trap? You are, General Morrison confirmed. But Captain, you won't be alone. We have a full tactical support team ready to move at a moment's notice, and every aspect of this operation has been planned to maximize your safety while achieving our operational objectives. As if summoned by their conversation, one of the intelligence analysts approached General Morrison with a tablet displaying urgent information. After reading it quickly, the general's expression became extremely serious. What is it? Captain, said General Morrison slowly, we've just intercepted communications suggesting that the hostile agents have identified your location and are planning to move against this facility tonight.
The operations center erupted into controlled chaos as General Morrison's announcement triggered immediate emergency protocols. Elena watched with professional admiration as dozens of analysts and support personnel transformed from routine monitoring operations into crisis response mode within seconds. All personnel to phase red alert status, General Morrison announced over the facility's communication system. This is not a drill. We have confirmed hostile approach to facility perimeter. Elena felt her combat training taking over, suppressing fear and uncertainty in favor of tactical focus. General, what are my orders? Captain, you're going to be moved to the most secure section of this facility while our response teams deal with the threat, General Morrison replied. The vault level is designed to protect against any conventional assault, and it has independent life support systems that can sustain operations for weeks if necessary. Dr. Chen approached with what appeared to be body armor and advanced communication equipment. Captain, you'll need to put this on immediately. The armor includes integrated sensors that will allow us to monitor your biological functions and location at all times. Elena quickly donned the equipment, noting its sophisticated design and lightweight construction. How many hostiles are we expecting? Unknown, replied the intelligence analyst who had delivered the initial warning. Our perimeter sensors have detected at least 12 individuals approaching from multiple directions, but there could be additional teams that haven't triggered our detection systems yet. General Morrison was coordinating with multiple teams simultaneously, speaking into a secure communication device while monitoring real-time tactical displays. Alpha Team established defensive positions at access points 1 through 4. Bravo Team, secure the tunnel approaches. Charlie Team, prepare for emergency evacuation protocols.
Elena studied the tactical displays, recognizing the professional quality of the defensive preparations. General, with respect, I request permission to participate in defensive operations rather than hiding in a vault. I'm a combat experienced officer, and I might be more useful helping with the response. General Morrison looked at Elena with an expression that mixed respect with determination. Captain, I understand your desire to fight, but you are not just another soldier in this situation. You are irreplaceable intelligence asset whose capture would be catastrophic for national security. Your job is to survive, not to engage in combat. Elena nodded reluctantly, understanding the logic even if she didn't like feeling helpless. Understood, ma'am. Dr. Chen will escort you to the vault level. If the situation deteriorates, there are emergency protocols that will allow you to be evacuated through underground tunnels to secondary facilities. As they prepared to leave the operations center, one of the tactical monitors suddenly displayed incoming video feeds from the facility's perimeter security cameras. Elena could see dark figures moving through the mountain terrain with the kind of coordination and equipment that suggested military or intelligence training. They're using thermal camouflage and electronic countermeasures, observed one of the analysts. This is definitely a professional operation. Elena watched the figures on the screen, noting their movement patterns and tactical formations. These aren't random criminals or terrorists. This looks like a special operations assault team. That's consistent with our intelligence assessment, Dr. Chen said grimly. The consortium we're dealing with includes former special forces operatives from multiple countries, including some who received training from American military programs. The elevator ride to the vault level seemed to take forever, though Elena knew it was probably only a few minutes. The weight of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours was beginning to settle on her shoulders. The revelation about her family history, the biological encryption embedded in her skin, the global conspiracy that had been hunting people like her for years. Dr. Chen, Elena said as they descended deeper into the mountain, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Captain." "Do you think my great-grandfather knew what he was doing to future generations when he agreed to the biological encryption process? Did he understand that his descendants would become targets?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment before responding. "Captain, from everything I've learned about your great-grandfather, he was an exceptionally brave and principled man who made enormous sacrifices for his country. I believe he understood the risks, but I also believe he felt the information he was protecting was important enough to justify those risks." Elena nodded, finding some comfort in that assessment. "I keep thinking about the stories my grandmother told me about him. She always said he was a man who did what was right, even when it was difficult." "Based on everything we know about his service record," Dr. Chen replied, "your grandmother was absolutely correct." The elevator finally stopped at the vault level, and Elena stepped out into a corridor that looked more like a bank vault than a military facility. Massive steel doors lined the walls, each one requiring multiple security procedures to open. The air here felt different, filtered and recycled, with the subtle hum of life support systems working to maintain perfect environmental conditions. "This is where you'll wait while we deal with the situation upstairs," Dr. Chen said, leading Elena to one of the secured rooms. The chamber is equipped with everything you might need for an extended stay: food, water, medical supplies, and communication equipment that will keep you connected to the operations center. Elena examined the room, noting its combination of comfort and security. There was a bed, a desk with computer access, and what appeared to be a small kitchen area. More importantly, she could see multiple communication devices and what looked like emergency escape hatches built into the floor. "Dr. Chen," Elena said, "I need you to promise me something." "What's that, Captain?" "I need you to promise me that if this facility is compromised and there's a risk of my capture, I want you to destroy the biological encryption rather than allow it to fall into hostile hands." Dr. Chen's expression became very serious. "Captain, are you asking me to—" "I'm asking you to do whatever is necessary to protect the information," Elena replied firmly. "I'm a soldier and I understand the stakes. The activation codes embedded in my skin cannot be allowed to fall into the wrong hands, regardless of the personal consequences to me." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. Captain, I hope it doesn't come to that, but I understand your position. You have my word that the security of the information will take priority over all other considerations. Suddenly, the lights in the corridor flickered, and they could hear the distant sound of explosions from somewhere far above them. It's starting, Dr. Chen said, checking her communication device. Captain, get inside the secure room and lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except for me or General Morrison, and only if we provide the proper authentication codes. Elena stepped into the secure room and turned back to face Dr. Chen. Doctor, take care of yourself up there, and make sure our people know that whatever happens, I'm grateful for everything they've done to protect me and this information. Dr. Chen smiled grimly. We're going to get through this, Captain. Your great-grandfather's legacy is not going to end with us. As the massive steel door sealed shut, Elena found herself alone in the most secure room she had ever occupied, listening to the sounds of battle beginning somewhere in the mountain above her.
Elena sat in the secure chamber, monitoring the tactical communications that filtered down to her through the facility's internal network. The sounds of battle had intensified over the past hour, with regular reports of explosions, gunfire, and coordinated defensive maneuvers echoing through the mountain complex. Alpha Team, hostile breach at Access Point 2, came one transmission, requesting immediate backup. Bravo Team, we've lost contact with perimeter sensors on the north side, came another. Elena found herself pacing the small confines of the chamber, her military training making it almost unbearable to remain passive while her fellow soldiers fought above her. Every instinct screamed at her to join the battle, to contribute something meaningful to the defense of the facility. But she understood that her role now was different. She was not just Captain Elena Vasquez anymore, but a living repository of secrets that could reshape global intelligence operations. The communications system crackled with Dr. Chen's voice. Captain, how are you holding up down there? Elena grabbed the microphone immediately. I'm fine, Dr. Chen. What's the tactical situation? The hostile forces are more numerous and better equipped than we initially estimated. They've managed to breach our outer perimeter and are currently engaging our defensive teams in the upper levels of the facility. Elena could hear the stress in Dr. Chen's voice, along with background sounds that suggested the operations center was under significant pressure. Do you need me to activate any of the emergency protocols? Not yet, Captain, but be prepared. We may need to implement evacuation procedures if the situation deteriorates further. Elena checked her equipment and reviewed the emergency evacuation plans that had been provided to her. The secure chamber was connected to a network of underground tunnels that could transport her to 3 different emergency extraction points, each one several miles away from the main facility. Suddenly, the lights in the chamber flickered again, and Elena heard a new sound, something that made her blood run cold. It was the distinct whine of cutting equipment, coming from somewhere very close to her location. Dr. Chen, Elena called into the communication system. I'm hearing cutting sounds near my position. Are our people conducting any operations down here? There was a pause before Dr. Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried obvious alarm. Negative, Captain. All our personnel are accounted for in the upper levels of the facility. You need to implement escape protocol immediately. Elena's military training took over instantly. She grabbed her equipment and moved to the emergency escape hatch built into the floor of the chamber. As she began the activation sequence, she could hear the cutting sounds getting closer and more intense. Dr. Chen, I'm activating Escape Protocol Charlie, Elena reported. The cutting sounds are getting louder. Understood, Captain. Emergency extraction team is being dispatched to Extraction Point 3, ETA 20 minutes. Elena opened the escape hatch and found herself looking down into a narrow tunnel that disappeared into darkness. Emergency lighting automatically activated, revealing a path that led away from the facility through what appeared to be natural cave formations. As she prepared to enter the tunnel, Elena heard a sound that made her heart skip, the distinct hiss of cutting equipment finally breaking through metal. The hostile forces had somehow located her position and were cutting through the supposedly impenetrable security barriers. Dr. Chen, Elena called into the communication system. I'm hearing cutting sounds near my position. Are our people conducting any operations down here? There was a pause before Dr. Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried obvious alarm.
Negative, Captain. All our personnel are accounted for in the upper levels of the facility. You need to implement escape protocol immediately. Elena's military training took over instantly. She grabbed her equipment and moved to the emergency escape hatch built into the floor of the chamber. As she began the activation sequence, she could hear the cutting sounds getting closer and more intense. Dr. Chen, I'm activating escape protocol Charlie, Elena reported. The cutting sounds are getting louder. Understood, Captain. Emergency extraction team is being dispatched to extraction point 3, ETA 20 minutes. Elena opened the escape hatch and found herself looking down into a narrow tunnel that disappeared into darkness. Emergency lighting automatically activated, revealing a path that led away from the facility through what appeared to be natural cave formations. As she prepared to enter the tunnel, Elena heard a sound that made her heart skip, the distinct hiss of cutting equipment finally breaking through metal. The hostile forces had somehow located her position and were cutting through the supposedly impenetrable security barriers. Dr. Chen, Elena reported through the communication system, they've breached the vault level. I'm proceeding to extraction point 3. Captain, came Dr. Chen's urgent voice, our analysis suggests they had inside information about the facility layout. Someone provided them with detailed intelligence about your location. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air in the tunnel. Are you saying we have a traitor in our organization? That's the only explanation for how they could have located you so quickly and precisely, Dr. Chen replied. Captain, until we identify the source of the leak, you cannot trust anyone except General Morrison and myself. Elena reached another branching point in the tunnel system and consulted her emergency navigation device to determine the correct path to extraction point 3. As she moved deeper into the cave system, she began to appreciate the sophisticated planning that had gone into creating these escape routes. The passages were wide enough for easy movement, but narrow enough to prevent vehicle pursuit, and they included multiple branching paths that would confuse anyone who didn't have proper navigation equipment. Dr. Chen, Elena called through her communication device, I'm approximately halfway to extraction point 3. What's the status of the main facility? We've managed to repel the primary assault, Dr. Chen replied, but several hostile operatives escaped before we could capture them. Captain, we've also made a disturbing discovery about how they located you. Elena paused in her movement through the tunnel. What kind of discovery? Our security analysis has revealed that someone with access to Project Awakening information has been providing intelligence to the hostile forces for at least several weeks. The precision of their attack and their knowledge of your location could only have come from someone within our own organization. Elena felt a wave of betrayal and anger. After everything she had been through, after trusting these people with her life and the secrets embedded in her skin, someone had been working against them from the beginning. Do we know who the traitor is? Elena asked as she continued moving through the tunnel system. We're still investigating, but the circle of people with access to your location was very small, Dr. Chen replied. Captain, until we identify the source of the leak, you cannot trust anyone except General Morrison and myself. Elena reached another branching point in the tunnel system and consulted her emergency navigation device. According to the emergency protocols, she was now approximately 9 minutes from extraction point 3, but she could still hear pursuit sounds echoing through the caves behind her. Dr. Chen, I'm still being pursued through the tunnel system. How much support will be available at the extraction point? Full tactical team is standing by. But Captain, given the security breach, we're implementing modified extraction protocols. The team will verify your identity using biometric scanning before allowing you to approach the extraction vehicle. Elena understood the precaution, but it also meant that her escape would be more complicated and potentially more dangerous. As she moved through the final section of tunnel toward the extraction point, she began to see natural light filtering down from what appeared to be a cave opening above her. The extraction point was located in a small valley surrounded by dense forest, with the cave opening concealed behind a waterfall that provided both visual and acoustic camouflage. Elena could see a military helicopter waiting in a clearing about 50 yards from the cave entrance, with a full tactical team positioned in defensive positions around the perimeter. Extraction team, this is Captain Vasquez approaching from the tunnel system, Elena called through her communication device, requesting authentication verification. Captain Vasquez, this is Colonel Matthews, extraction team leader. Please proceed to the biometric scanner located at the cave entrance for identity verification. Elena approached the scanner, noting that the tactical team maintained their defensive positions while keeping their weapons ready. The biometric verification process took less than 30 seconds, confirming her identity through retinal scanning and genetic markers. Identity confirmed, Colonel Matthews announced. Captain, please proceed to the helicopter immediately. We have reports of additional hostile forces in the area. As Elena ran towards the helicopter, she heard the distinct sound of gunfire erupting from the forest around the extraction point. The hostile pursuit team had apparently found alternate routes to the extraction site and was now engaging the military response team. Go, 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 Colonel Matthews shouted as Elena reached the helicopter. We need to extract immediately. Elena threw herself into the helicopter just as the pilot began lifting off. Through the open door, she could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions in the forest as the tactical team engaged hostile forces who had emerged from concealed positions. Dr. Chen, Elena called through her communication system, extraction successful, but the hostile forces are more extensive than we anticipated. They had people positioned at the extraction point before we even arrived. Captain, that confirms our worst fears about the security breach. Dr. Chen replied, someone provided them with complete intelligence about our emergency protocols. As the helicopter flew through the mountain terrain toward what Elena assumed was another secure facility, Elena found herself reflecting on everything that had happened since that morning. In less than 24 hours, her entire understanding of herself, her family, and her role in the world had been completely transformed. The markings on her skin that she had never given much thought to were apparently the key to a vast intelligence network that had been dormant for over 60 years. Her great-grandfather, who she had always thought of as a simple rancher, had been one of the most important intelligence operatives in American history. And now she was being hunted by international criminals who wanted to use her biological encryption to access resources that could fund terrorist operations for decades. Captain, came Colonel Matthews' voice over the helicopter's
Captain, came Colonel Matthews' voice over the helicopter's internal communication system. We're approaching the secondary facility. This location is known only to General Morrison and a handful of other senior officials, so it should be secure from whatever security breach compromised the primary site. Elena looked out the helicopter window at the landscape passing below. They were flying over wilderness areas that showed no signs of human habitation, heading toward what appeared to be another mountain complex in the distance. Colonel, Elena said, what happens next? How do we proceed with the investigation when we can't trust our own people? That's above my clearance level, Captain, Colonel Matthews replied, but I can tell you that General Morrison has been developing contingency plans for exactly this type of situation. The Project Inheritance Network was designed to operate independently of conventional intelligence agencies, and those capabilities are about to be put to the test. As the helicopter descended toward the secondary facility, Elena could see that it was much smaller than the underground complex they had just evacuated, but it appeared to be built into a natural cave system that would make it extremely difficult to detect or assault. Captain, Dr. Chen's voice came through the communication system. I need to inform you that our preliminary analysis of the biological encryption has revealed something extraordinary. The information embedded in your skin is not just historical intelligence. It includes activation protocols for resources and capabilities that are still operational today. Elena felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. What kind of resources? Financial accounts worth billions of dollars, weapons caches in major cities worldwide, and a network of sleeper agents who have been living normal lives for decades while waiting for activation orders, Dr. Chen replied. Captain, your great-grandfather didn't just preserve information about the past, he created a shadow intelligence network that could reshape the current global security landscape. As the helicopter touched down at the secondary facility, Elena realized that her ordeal was far from over. In fact, it was probably just beginning. The secrets embedded in her skin were apparently more valuable and more dangerous than anyone had initially understood. And the people hunting her would not give up easily. Dr. Chen, Elena said as she prepared to disembark from the helicopter, I need you to know that regardless of what happens next, I'm committed to ensuring that this information serves the interests of my country and the cause of freedom. My great-grandfather made sacrifices to preserve these secrets, and I'm prepared to do the same. Dr. Chen, Elena replied,
I believe your great-grandfather would be very proud of the woman you've become. And I have a feeling that the next phase of this operation is going to require every bit of courage and determination that you can muster. Elena stepped out of the helicopter and walked toward the entrance of the secondary facility, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The biological encryption embedded in her skin was no longer just a family legacy. It was apparently the key to a secret world that had been waiting 60 years to be awakened.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.